Hey guys, in today's video I will be sharing with you my color grading process as well as some tips and tricks. That said, I will be using 5 different clips from 5 different cameras and color grading them each, walking you through how I go about those. I also have my own LUT pack if you guys want to check that out, including some free LUTs for you to try as well. It will definitely support the channel, link in the description. We are going to use Premiere Pro, but I will be doing a video in DaVinci down the line for those using that. Here is the timeline and here are my clips. I'm going to bring my adjustment layers over. This is pretty much my workflow setup. I've organized and labeled it to help you see a lot easier on how I navigate through. You could do this or combine everything all in one adjustment layer as well. It's up to you. So to simplify it, we will go in order. You will add your conversion LUT here, do your primary corrections here, add your creative LUT here, and finally do your secondary colors here. We will then apply the Lumetri colors effect to each adjustment layer. For the GoPro, Lumix, and Nikon, I will not use any log conversions as I like to grade those from scratch. And also we will move the creative LUT above the Rec 709 conversion on the red footage, as the LUTs I plan to use are general LUTs and not specified for IPP2 red footage, so you would set it up this way. I'm not going to explain too much of that, but at least I wanted to explain briefly before starting. Starting off, we have our DJI footage with the D-Log picture profile settings. First things first, let's convert this footage to Rec 709 with DJI's conversion LUT. You can go to their website and search for your specific drone's conversion LUT file, and it's free. Once you've downloaded that, you can load that into this input right here. As you can see, it has converted our footage to a solid spot to get things going. You could do this from scratch, but that is up to you. This is just the faster method. After that, let's go into our primary corrections. I would do some basic corrections starting with the color wheels and match section, just pulling down the shadows and highlights of the overall footage. Then we will go into the basic corrections section to look more closely at our exposures. First, we'll have a look at the white balance. I'm going to be going for a more cooler type of look, so I think this is suitable for our current white balance as of right now. It looks maybe more warm in the tree areas, but that should be fine. To quickly tell with your white balance, you can refer to your RGB parade in your Lumetri scope. Generally, if all levels are equal, then you are balanced. Of course, that will be different for each shot, or if you want to be more warm or cool or green or magenta, one of these will be higher or lower than the rest. I will then pull down the highlights, add some contrast, being careful not to clip my footage. For reference, I am using the Luma waveform to kind of see where my range is at. Let's go into our LUT layer and then open up the creative section. You then want to import your LUT here. I will be grabbing one of my LUTs from my LUT pack. This one has no contrast, but I have that option for you if you want to just slap those on and adjust from there. Each of the LUTs will be like that in this pack. On the side note, I will not use a LUT on the next footage, so you can see me working without one and how I go about creating a look from scratch. But let's continue. I'll leave the intensity as is and then go into the secondary color layer. This is where I will start off with the RGB curves. Usually you can start with 3 points. I'm just going to start from the bottom and then work my way up to the top because I want to see how the shadows look first. Generally, you'll end up with an S curve here, but of course that will depend on the shot. After that, I will go down to the hue versus saturation curves. This is where I can bring in more or less saturation to a specific color of a shot. So in this case, I want to bring in more blue for the water and the greens from the trees. I might change this later on, but this is kind of how I'm going about it right now. I'm going to go into the hue versus hue curves. This is where I can shift the colors to another color. So in this case, I'm wanting to turn my greens towards the yellow side. And as you can see, they are coming off as a bit brownish. I have plans to maybe add in more greens later on using the HSL secondary. So I don't want to have my trees too green at this moment. Again, this might change as we continue down, but I think this should work for now. I will go into this curve here, which is the Luma versus saturation curve. It ensures that your whitest parts stay white and your blackest parts stay black. Now let's scroll down to our HSL secondary. This is where I plan to add greens to the trees. So first, you can use the color picker tool to isolate the trees, or you can also use the general color and tap on that and adjust accordingly from there. I'm going to mask this to see this more clearly, then apply denoising and blurs to the footage so that way when I input the color, it comes out clean without any artifacts. I'm going to also add a little bit of contrast down here. Now I will go back up and readjust. I think maybe it's a bit too green, so I'll just add back in some orange, and I'm also going to reshift the yellows to reds. Then I'm going to desaturate the greens and make any micro adjustments in each layer if they are needed. Here is the before and after. Okay, this one will be super interesting because this is from a GoPro Hero 8 with the ProTune flat profile setting. We will follow the same steps, but this time we will create the grade from scratch rather than inputting the LUT. So let's start off in our primary color correction layer. I'm gonna bring down the shadows, mids, and highlights. Let's move up to the basic color correction section. I will grab the color picker tool to see if we can white balance the image. I'll drop it on the white part of the flag. There we go. Let's decrease the highlights, decrease the shadows, and add a bit of contrast. We will go into our LUT layer and add our saturation here. We might come back and change this, but we will see. Let's move up to the second colors layer and start with the RGB curves. Just wanting to add more depth to the shot so our curves will come out a little bit like this. Next will be the hue versus saturation curve section. I will add in more yellows to the shot, and then we'll move down to the hue versus hue section and shift the yellows to a bit more orange color. Gonna make some readjustments in the RGB curves before going down to the luma versus saturation curve to make the blacks true black, whites true white. I'm gonna go back up and readjust and desaturate the blues and also readjust my RGB curves. Now let's go back to the first layer and add a bit more contrast. As you can see, there's a lot of adjustments in between to get the colors I want, but it's essentially finessing at this point as we have a solid color grade going for us right now. So I wanna bring out some teals or cyan, I guess you could say, in the shadows. So I tab over to the reds curves and adjust the bottom half and lowering it ever so slightly. I'm going to add masks on top here to even out the orange color. I'm going to readjust a little bit more in each layers. Then finally go back and add in a bit of orange tint to the clip. Here's the before and after. Now let's color the camera that maybe most of you guys that follow me want to know the most, which is the Lumix G85 with the natural picture profile setting. Same steps as before, we will start in our primary corrections layer and lower the shadows, mids, and increase the highlights. Then let's move up to our basic correction section. I think I like the temperature of this shot so far, so I think I'll keep the white balance as is. Maybe change that a little bit later on. I'm going to decrease the shadows a touch and then add some contrast and highlights. Now let's go into our LUT layer and import one of my LUTs. It'll be the teal and orange look as the shot has that color scheme already, just trying to enhance it more. I'm going to decrease the intensity a bit. Then we're going to make our way into the second colors layer. Let's go into the RGB curves. We will go into our hue versus saturation curves and increase the blues and orange. And then we'll go into our hue versus hue curves and then shift the orange towards the reds. We'll scroll down to our luma versus saturation curves and make our blacks true black and whites true white. Let's go into our saturation and increase it overall and just making micro adjustments throughout to get the colors looking the way I want them to. I'll also go and add a bit more blue in our shadows using the reds curves here. We need to keep in mind that we are a bit over the line in our vector scope, so we want to adjust accordingly to have it go back down. We're going to desaturate the oranges, and lastly make micro adjustments to the shot as everything should be in place now. Here is the before and after. So this clip here is taken from a red Komodo camera. This will be pretty cool to showcase this workflow here, as I think the majority of colorists would be using DaVinci Resolve for this. But let's see how we go about it in Premiere. So first step is to get our Rec 709 conversion LUT. We will go to Red's website and download it for free there. They have multiple conversion LUTs to choose from. I decided to use the medium contrast and soft light Rec 709 conversion LUT for this shot here. After adding that in, you can see that we are at a better position to work with and can start our process. Let's go into our primary color correction layer and open up the color wheels and match section and decrease the shadows, increase our mids, and increase our highlights. Now let's go up to the basic corrections. I think I like the warm look of this shot, so I will keep the white balance as is and really play around the sunset type of color once we get into the grading aspect. I'm gonna increase the highlights, decrease the shadows, add some contrast, and bump up the exposure, just a tad. Okay, let's go into our creative LUT. I will apply one of my LUTs that caters towards the yellow and green colors, and I think it'll complement this scene pretty nicely. Now we just adjust our intensities and saturations here, and then go into the secondary color layer. Now let's get into our RGB curves. I will just start in the middle and go from there. I think I want to make this shot not too contrasty as my previous shots, as I like the less contrasty type of styling on red footage. Let's boost up the reds, orange, and yellows of this shot and decrease the blues. And increase the greens just ever so slightly. Let's go down to our luma versus saturation and make our blacks true black and whites true white. Let's go down to our HSL secondary and add in a bit more to our skin tones. So I will grab the color picker here and click on the person's leg. Then go into our color wheel and add in a bit more yellow and orange for the skin tone. And then I will just adjust a bit more throughout each layer to the level I want. I'll probably shift the yellows just a touch towards more of the orange, but very subtle. And here's the before and after. Alright, so this last shot was done on a Nikon D3300. If you don't know already, this is an old camera and the color grading on this, well, you know, but a fun challenge otherwise. I'll just showcase to you the layers here and how I went about it, as you can already understand my process by now. The first 3 layers are the same as before. You got your primary, your LUT, and your secondary. Now this 4th layer is a masking layer correction for the subject's face to add just a little bit more color there, as it was really hard to pull colors through given the limitations with this camera. So this last layer, it's kind of a trick I'd use if you have tricky colors or the shot is lacking something or whatever the case may be. I would just add this pretty cool and easy effect overlay to focus in on the subject more so. This effect is essentially the directional blur effect and is overlaid on top. I just duplicated the clip, scaled it up a bit, created a mask around the subject, changed the blending mode to lighten. You could also do screen as well. Then applied the directional blur effect. You can copy and paste the same color grading into here. I think this adds more to the shot and makes the color grade look somewhat decent given its limitations. Here is the before and after. So yeah, that's essentially my color grading process. Hopefully you were able to take something away from this. To those who stayed all the way through, just wanted to say thank you so much. Be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next.